What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Shelf Appeal, the weekly show where I go over all the comic books that I picked up, let you know what they're all about, and whether there's something you should go back to the comic book shop for or not. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with Steve Rogers' Captain America number 5. And I know this issue is a couple months old, but I was told by somebody in the comments that I had to go back and read it because of my distaste for Civil War II issue number 7. And I read it, and I already had a pretty good idea of what it said inside of it, and it doesn't really change my opinion. Overall, I feel like Nick Spencer is writing a much better book than the overall Civil War II arc really gets credit for. And it's one of those things where another commenter popped up in the video, and they're like, this is all the emotional journey and everything, and then people are talking about different tie-ins, and you know what? The tie-ins are better books than the event. So it's just one of those situations where I really like the emotional journeys that different characters are going on, but overall I find that the event itself and the issues surrounding it, if you take them as a whole, are very lackluster. So it's just one of those things where it's not really going to change my opinion too terribly much, but I definitely appreciate you guys giving me the recommended reading material, and don't think that I don't listen to you. So the next one we're going to talk about is New Avengers number 18, and New Avengers number 18 is the first New Avengers book that I really picked up this year, and it makes me want to go back and reread all of them. So Roberto da Costa, Bobby Sunspot, he's having a funeral, and ultimately it's an elaborate ruse, but it's like the entire culmination of the entire New Avengers run by Al Ewing, and I would hate to ruin it for you guys, but I have to say that this is one of those books where I was probably missing out by not reading it, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to take a look at it, and I'll probably let you know how those first few issues and first few story arcs really went. But the important thing is that this book is going to be continuing in a slightly different format as US Avengers, which is going to debut next month. Definitely a book that I'd recommend picking up just based on this issue alone, without any kind of context for the rest of the story. I really like Al Ewing's writing, and this is going to be no exception. USA Avengers, or US Avengers, should be something special. Another book that I picked up that's a little bit outside my norm is Old Man Logan number 14, written by Jeff Lemire. And this book has a different artist, so it's not Andrea Sorrentino, which has been doing the art for all the previous books, but it's a different one. However, we're in luck because this artist is only going to be sticking around for 2 issues, this one and the next one, as they kind of revisit this story arc in next issue, because it's Old Man Logan and a bunch of monsters and nocturnal nightmare kind of creatures like Vampire by Night and a couple other things. It's really a one-shot, 2-issue kind of situation where it's not really going to be telling an overall progressive story arc. At least that's what it seems. It's just a really nice filler before we dive into the next piece, which is going to really deal with Old Man Logan a little bit more. If you're familiar with the Sorrentino art and you jump into this book, you're probably going to notice a few differences, which might be a little bit off-putting. So it's one of those things where your mileage may vary. But I always have confidence in Jeff Lemire as a writer, so I'm going to be sticking with it. However, there's a book that I don't have a lot of confidence in, and that is IvX number 0. So this is essentially your filler piece. This is where you find all the information regarding what happened after the death of Cyclops, which actually took place quite a while ago, relative to the issues that have been coming out, Emma Frost's plot and all that kind of stuff. And it turns out that more people were in on it than we kind of knew. This is a story of Hank McCoy, the modern-day Beast, not the young time traveler Beast, but the modern-day Beast, trying to find a solution to this conflict before it ever really happens, and ultimately failing, and Emma Frost knowing that the conflict is inevitable and preparing her forces for battle. So she enlists anybody and everybody that she could possibly get on her side while honing her own skills in preparation. So it's one of those books where I'm going to read it, but I kind of don't want to read it. Death of X didn't really leave me wanting this kind of thing to happen, but I'll give issue 1 a shot, and I'm like super event fatigued right now. It just feels like there's way too much going on that doesn't really have a distinct purpose. And the whole conflict between the Inhumans versus X-Men, I just really don't buy into it. Then we have another book that I found entertaining at the beginning, but it's kind of lost me, and that's Totally Awesome Hulk number 12. So Totally Awesome Hulk, the first arc was really great because it started to dissect the character of the Hulk and what that Hulk personality meant. And we do get a cameo from Bruce Banner in this one, as a kind of memory in Amadeus Cho's mind. And this is just one of those situations where Greg Pak is trying to right the ship. He's trying to kind of undo this whole Civil War II jumping off the rails situation and bring it back to a story about Amadeus and how his Hulk personality is different and what it means, what the Hulk is as a characteristic when it's passed from one individual to another, what the personification is. And it's a very sophisticated story. I was really excited about that and how it was going to move forward until I saw the cover for the next one, which has Jeremy Lin. So I'm not really sure how I feel about that. This is a book that probably is going to be no longer on my pull list for the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, it's just not grabbing me with that kind of content. But there is a book that is grabbing me with pretty much any kind of content, and that is Seven to Eternity #3. So Jerome Opna continues to lay out this masterful artwork that really drives at the heart of this conflict, its magical, mystical nature, as well as the inherent violence that goes along with this. There's not really a whole lot of graphicness in some situations. It's sometimes what you don't see that makes things more dire. And we get a little bit more of a sense of how the magical mysticism works, and we get the first look at the Black Well, the library of these dark souls that are, powered by these illuminated ones and all this kind of stuff. It's super cool, mystical, fantastical, and I really enjoy it. If you haven't picked up Seven to Eternity, there's a whole bunch of reprints out for the first, second, and now this third issue, which just dropped today. Definitely go grab it. I really recommend this one for people. Now that we're done with the recurring books, I'm going to talk about Ghost Rider #1, which is the first new #1 out of the ones that I grabbed. And this is a book that's a continuation of the previous series, which was written by the same creative team, and it's really coming on the heels of the popularity of Ghost Rider and the Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show on ABC. And not reading the first series of comic books definitely hurt me on this one. I didn't have nearly enough backstory in order to form a really solid opinion of it. And the feeling that this really started off with a lot of cameos, like there's Amadeus Cho takes up probably a third of the story, and then there's a backup story about, some sort of internet fitness celebrity, and then you get a Laura Kinney spotting along with, Gabby at the end of it. So I'm just hoping that this book doesn't really piggyback on the cameos of other heroes inside the Marvel Universe in order to kind of make it work. So I'm interested to see where #2 goes, but #1 didn't really have a whole heck of a lot to offer me until I probably get the backstory out of the first series, and that's not really a great jumping on point. But if we want to talk about a great jumping on point, then the DC New Talent Showcase is probably the best one you're going to get. Not necessarily because of the characters that are introduced with this, because this is all about established characters. This is about the writers and the artists. So there's no less than a half dozen different stories in here that are using your favorite characters. You've got a Wonder Woman story, you've got a Superman story, you've got a Batman story, you've got a Catwoman, you've got Harley Quinn. There's all kinds of different people in here that are taking on different tasks. And you've probably noticed a few of those already kind of kicking around outside in the DC universe. There's Juan Ferreira, I can't really say his name, but he's on Green Arrow. And then Bagenda, who was doing the Omega Men with Tom King. And there's a few different people that are already in here. Carrie Randolph, who's doing Mosaic over at Marvel. And a lot of talent is inside this book. And this is really the culmination of two different things that they had going on at DC, which was a writer's workshop and talent search, as well as an artist's workshop and talent search. So that's the combination of everything. There's a lot of really fun stuff in here. And if you want to read a couple cool, short one-shots about your favorite characters, definitely one to pick up. But definitely mind the price tag. At $7.99, it is a little bit tall, but you know what? This is the genesis of a lot of these people's careers, and I can't wait to support new people that are bringing a fresh face and a fresh voice to comics. But if we want to talk about the strongest book that came out this week, I'd have to say it's Superman Annual #1. So Superman Annual is a continuation of the Superman story from the overall Superman Rebirth arc. And this is kind of different because there's a few situations where annuals are really kind of collectives of individual stories, and we find that out more with Batman. But when it comes to Superman Annual, essentially he's just having a down-home time on the farm, and he's finding that his crops are not growing. He's finding that these resources that are around him are being absorbed, and he's not necessarily sure. There's no sign of a drought going on anywhere, but this is really what his experience is. And if we know anything about somebody that's in tune with nature, it's definitely Swamp Thing. So these two meet up and go on this kind of grand internal and external journey and battle to really show what's really happening to Superman inside this universe. And there's some DC Rebirth clues in here too, which is super cool as well. So I'm really excited to see where this kind of goes. There's not really going to be a continuation of this specific story, but as far as a one-shot that's on a little bit oversized nature, Jorge Jimenez's art is fantastic. Peter J. Tomasi, he does a great job with the writing. I really can't recommend Superman Annual enough. It doesn't miss a beat from the regular Superman story and continues to be just as strong as the regular books. And like I mentioned in the Superman review, we have Batman Annual #1, which is kind of a collection of short stories, but these are superstar short stories. So you've got Tom King and David Finch teaming up to tell the story of Ace the Bat Hound, which is super fun, and it's really nice. You've got The Silent Night, which is being told by Scott Snyder, and then you've also got a Harley Quinn story by Paul Dini. You've got the introduction of Stag, which is going to be a villain, possibly in 2017, as introduced by Steve Orlando, and a number of other books in there. So you've got different takes on Batman, Batman, his experiences, the way that time works, Harley Quinn, different villains. There's a lot of different stuff that goes on in here, and it's really an entertaining read. It's not necessarily a strong book, but it's a great collection for a Batman fan, so that way you get those kind of different perspectives, voices, and visions for the individual character. You can't miss out on this one now, especially if you've been reading Batman and Detective Comics, because it just complements those so much more. Definitely recommended pickup from me. I'm surprised that you don't already have it and aren't reading it right now. So those are all the books that I picked up this week, but I want to know what you grabbed too, so hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe right there to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.